is a recording.
Pull it together, will ya? If you enjoy those old school, like, crime scene stories or shows where detectives talk about crimes and how they solved them and this and that, I figured I'd put kind of like a fun one together. So I wrote it up, and here it is. It's called Quickly Solved Crimes with Detective Harry Johnson. Enjoy. Welcome, folks, to another episode of Quickly Solved Crimes with Detective Harry Johnson. This one's entitled The HOWIE FELTERSNATCH Murder. We now join Detective Harry Johnson as he enters the crime scene. As I enter the home, I'm greeted by one of the local policemen. Detective Johnson, glad to see ya. The body's over here in the living room. Entering the living room, I immediately notice the body on the floor, between the couch and the coffee table, and a pool of blood on the floor around the head. No one touched a thing, Detective. I made sure of it. The body was discovered by the maid this morning. One of our officers are with her in the kitchen. We figured you'd want to talk to her. Wonderful. Do we know anything about this gentleman? Why, yes, this is Mr. HOWIE FELTERSNATCH, one of the many elderly in the neighborhood. He's about 60 or so and very wealthy. Wife passed away years ago in that terrible bingo accident. Yes, the terrible bingo accident of 1928. I remember it like it was yesterday. How all those bingo balls got loose, we'll never know. Still haunts me in my dreams. As I kneel down next to the body, I notice the only trauma seems to be to his head. I then notice that there was a corner piece of the coffee table missing, with some blood and skin attached. A chunk of skin was missing from the left side of his head. On the other side of his head and face, it was all black and blue, and a bit deformed, as if he was hit with some kind of blunt object. By the untrained eye, one would think this was just an accidental fall, but my gut tells me something different. I enter the kitchen and see the maid sitting at the table with one of the officers. I pause to take her in. Just the sight of her hit me like a ton of bricks. She had flowing, jet-black hair with porcelain doll skin, bright green eyes, and a bust that looked like she was smuggling 2 hot air balloons that were fighting for takeoff. The button on the front of her blouse seemed as if it was about to pop, like a champagne cork on New Year's Eve. Shots fired. I snap out of it, pull myself together, and walk over to the table. I'll take it from here, officer. You got it, detective. Ma'am, my name's Detective Johnson. Harry Johnson. And I'd like to ask you a few questions. Let's start with your name. Yes, of course. My name is Dixie Normus, but please call me Dixie. Dixie? That's a lovely accent you have. Russian? Yes, it is. Very good, detective. How long have you worked for Mr. FELTERSNATCH? I worked 2 years for him. I am longest working maid here. No other maid want to stay. They all leave after 1 month. He was a very grumpy son of a bitch. Dixie, I understand that you're the one who found Mr. FELTERSNATCH this morning. Can you please walk me through it? Of course. I come every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to cook and clean entire house, except for his study. He does not want anybody in his study. He's a very weird old man. He work in his study all day and then watch TV in the living room the evening. He never want to go outside for anything. I come to home this morning at 6 a.m. like usual. I take key from under mat in front of door. Usually I bring newspaper in from front porch and leave it here on kitchen table for Mr. FELTERSNATCH. But this morning I enter home and on the way to kitchen I see him laying on ground in living room. I try to revive him, but no response. So I come into kitchen to call police. Does anyone else have access to the home? Only one other person has access. Mr. FELTERSNATCH's nephew, George. He come here twice every week to take care of outside property, but they don't get along. Always fight and yell. So George never come inside. Mr. FELTERSNATCH does not want him in-house. Everything seemed normal when you left here last night? Yes, everything normal. And I leave usual time. 6 p.m. Interesting. Can you tell me anything else? Anything out of the ordinary? Or anything seem out of place? No, detective. Nothing out of place. Well, thank you for your time, Dixie. If I have any other questions, I'll be in touch. Whether you have questions or not, detective, please, keep in touch. As I stood up, I felt weak in the knees. This broad was something else. She had a sweet floral whiskey scent, and it smelled delicious. Once again, I pulled myself together and looked around the home for a while, but saw nothing out of ordinary. I take a peek into the study. His desk is riddled with paperwork, bills and envelopes everywhere, but again, nothing that raises any eyebrows. I then head out to the front porch, light up a cigar, and make my way around the perimeter to check for any signs of possible breaking and entering. Hey, detective, your shoe's untied. Wouldn't want you to take a spill like our friend inside. As I tip my hat to the officer, I kneel down to tie my shoe, and that's when I see it, half buried in leaves, behind a bush just below the front porch. A Louisville Slugger. Not many children in this neighborhood, or baseball players for that matter. Now that surely raises an eyebrow. I remove a handkerchief from my suit pocket and carefully retrieve the Louisville Slugger. And wouldn't you know it, some red smudges on the thicker end of the bat. Looks like we may have our murder weapon, boys. Oh, wonderful, detective. I'll have him check it for prints. This seemed like the perfect time to pay a visit to the neighbors. Hello? Hello? Hello, ma'am. My name's Johnson. Harry Johnson. I'm with the police department, and I'd like to ask you a few questions about your neighbor. Hello? Who's there? Hello? Anyone there? Yes, ma'am. This is Detective Harry Johnson. And I'd like to ask you a few questions. Hello? Where's that music coming from? Hello? Hello? Never mind, ma'am. Never mind. I tried a few of the other neighbors, but they were also of no help. However, they did all confirm that Mr. FELTERSNATCH was indeed a mean old son of a bitch, just like Dixie had mentioned. Dixie, what a broad. Time to pay a visit to his nephew George and inform him of his uncle's death. On my drive there, I cross over the other side of the tracks. I begin to realize that George lives in the bad part of town, unlike his wealthy uncle. I pull up to his home. Wow, what a dump. I walk through the rusted, broken-down chain-link fence and up the walkway. There was an old beat-up Buick in the driveway. It was a real rust bucket. Looked like it survived some kind of flood. The lawn on both sides of the walk were uncared for. Looked more like dirt than it did grass. I climbed the two barely there wooden steps and onto the cracked cement porch. The outside of the house looked like a pair of my tighty whities, the morning after a long night of drinking bad beer followed by Mexican food. Not pretty. The screen door had no screen, and the run-down white wooden door was in desperate need of a paint job. But at this point, that would just be like slapping lipstick on a pig. Absolutely pointless. Hello, what can I do you for? Hello, sir. Are you Mr. George FELTERSNATCH? Yes, that's me. Who's asking? My name is Detective Johnson. Harry Johnson. And I'm afraid I have some terrible news. May I come in? Oh, yes, of course. Detective, please, come in. Make yourself at home. Excuse the mess. I don't entertain often. As I entered the home, the old wooden floorboards creaked beneath me. This place looked like a hooker's face who had a pimp with a heavy hand. All beat up. You mentioned some terrible news. What's this all about, Detective? Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but maybe we should sit down. Sure, right this way. I followed George into the living room. There were blackout curtains on the windows, and a rug on the floor with multiple questionable stains. The room was dimly lit, with an old lamp on an end table, next to a couch. The couch looked like it was dragged in from the curb that someone put there after it had caught fire. I took a seat on the couch. George sat across from me on an old wooden chair. Well, there's no easy way to say this, George. Your uncle, HOWIE FELTERSNATCH, well, let's just say he climbed the golden staircase. Now that's just absurd. The man can barely walk. What the hell is he going to do with a golden staircase? No, he didn't buy a staircase. But I guess you can say he bought the farm. He bought a farm now? I swear that man has more money than he knows what to do with. You would think he would throw a bone to his poor nephew. It's no secret that by looking around here, he hasn't really helped me much. No, George, he didn't buy anything. What I'm saying is, he's gone to a better place. Oh, so you're telling me he went to his vacation home in Maui? Well, it's about time. I still don't know why he didn't retire there years ago. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not really good at these kind of things. What I mean is that he kicked the bucket. Oh, well, I do apologize for that, Detective. Did he damage the bucket? I'll assure that he gets you a new one. For crying out loud, George, there was no bucket. Your uncle met his maker this morning. Wow, Detective, that's great news. How so? I know he's been wanting to meet his shoemaker from Italy for years now. Did Fabio fly to the U.S.? Because I know my uncle sure hates to fly. No. God damn it, George. Not a shoemaker. His maker. What I'm saying is your uncle was found this morning on the floor of his living room with a chunk of his skull missing. His blood all over the living room floor. He's dead. No longer with us. Breathed his last breath. He'll be pushing up daisies now, and it was made to look like an accident. But I have reason to believe he was murdered. Now, George, where were you between 6 p.m. last night and 6 a.m. this morning? Now, you just wait a minute, Detective. How dare you come into my home and tell me my uncle is dead in such an unprofessional and gruesome manner? The least you could have done was try to break the news to me in an indirect way, so to soften the blow at least. Then you give me the third degree to boot? Who do you think you are? Listen here, George. I do apologize for your uncle's untimely death. My deepest condolences. However, I'm not accusing you of a thing. My job as a detective is to investigate and find all the facts. Now, if someone did murder your uncle, I'd like to get to the bottom of it. Can you give me any information that may help? Did he have any enemies? I'm sorry about the outburst, Detective. I understand you're just trying to help during this tough time. George leaned over and grabbed a smoking pipe out of a wooden box on the coffee table between us. He packed it with some tobacco and lit it up. The pipe was rather unusual looking. It was a light cherry wood color, and you could see the actual grain design in the wood on the pipe. It reminded me of my high school prom date. Thick, yet elegant. He continued. He was a very old and grumpy man, not liked by many people at all. Rubbed everyone the wrong way, including me. His riches got to him. We didn't have the best relationship. I mean, you see how I live here compared to him. He paid me small amounts of money every week just to take care of his landscaping. It wasn't much, but it helped me just get by between all my other odd jobs. I've done so much for the man, and not much in return at all. But he was family, Detective. I could never do such a thing. We argued and had our differences, but like I said, he was family. As for me, I've been home since 5 p.m. last night. Were you with anyone last night, George? Anyone that could vouch for the fact that you were home? No, unfortunately, I have no one, Detective. He was my only family left. And I can't exactly meet any women living in a dump like this. Now, if you're done with the inquisitions, I'd like to be alone. I understand. Well, George, if you can think of anything else, please don't hesitate. If I make any leeway on the case, I'll be in touch. Take care, Detective. On my next stop, I decided to swing by the police lab and see if there was any updates on the bloody Louisville slugger that I had found earlier in the day, in front of Howie Feltersnatch's home. We now join Detective Johnson in the police lab with the lab examiner, Walter. Good to see you again, Walter. Any news on that slugger? Detective Johnson. Good afternoon. I was just finishing up on that evidence you sent over earlier. We found 2 sets of prints on the handle part of the slugger. They belonged to one Howie Feltersnatch, and the other to a one George Feltersnatch. That's interesting, Walter. What about the blood? Anything come of that? Well, Detective, that'll take a few weeks. Our DNA testing technology isn't quite up to par yet. However, we were able to match up a hair that we found on the slugger with hair from the victim's head. We scientifically believe that they are a match. Other than the prints and the hair, we have nothing else. I see. Well, I thank you for your time, Walter. You're always a big help. How are the wife and kids doing? I've never been married and have no kids, Detective. I think you've got me confused with someone else. Wonderful. It's been great catching up. Unfortunately, I can't stick around and chit-chat all day. I've got a case to solve. Take care, Walter, and please, send my regards to the wife and kids. I'm not married, Detective. As I walk up the steps to my office building, I ponder three things. 1. Everything seems to point towards Howie FELTERSNATCH's nephew, George. He's got no alibi for the night of the crime, and his prints are on the murder weapon. But it seems I'm still missing something. 2. I can't seem to get that maid, Dixie Normus's sweet floral whiskey scent out of my nostrils, and the vision of her bodacious bust out of my mind. How in the hell did she get that button on her blouse to hold up so well? 3. I thought Walter was married. Who am I confusing him with? That was awkward. As I walk into my office, I see my secretary, Peggy, sitting at her desk, filing her nails. Well, hello, Detective. Peggy, you look busy as usual. You got no messages and no calls. You're doing a hell of a job, Peggy. Hell of a job. I walk past her desk and into my office. I take my hat off, throw it onto the couch. I grab a cigar out of the cigar box on my desk. Peggy got me that cigar box last Christmas. She's a sweet gal. Should I put on a pot of coffee for you? Yes, please. That would be wonderful. I sit at my desk, swivel the chair around to face the window. I lean back in my chair and put my heels up on the ledge. This is my usual thinking position. As I light up my cigar, Peggy walks in with a notepad and pencil and sits at the chair in front of my desk. So how's the case going? Well, I'm pretty sure I know who's done it, but there's a missing piece that I haven't quite figured out yet. Oh, you mean just like you haven't figured out how to use the hat hook near the door? She gets up and grabs the hat off the couch and places it on the hook near the door. You sure do got a smart mouth for a dame, Peggy. Someone's got to keep things interesting around here. Peggy's worked for me for years. She's got a smart mouth but a caring heart. She's a petite little gal but a tough cookie. Like a hard, stale cookie. The kind of cookie that looks inviting, but biting into it would only cause you to chip a tooth, swallow it, and die. How are the kids, Peggy? 2 teenage girls? Let's just say, I wouldn't be opposed to locking them in a closet until they were in their 20s. Oh, speaking of, Detective, would you mind if I head out of here a little early tomorrow? Charles and I want to make an appointment to update our will. Of course. Go right ahead. Everything okay? Things are wonderful, but you never know, you know? With Charlie working in the factory and all. Well, that's smart of you two thinking ahead like that. What about you, Detective? Do you have a will? I have no need for one. As you know, my folks aren't around anymore, and I haven't heard from my sister in years. Besides, I don't have much, except for the car and the lease on my apartment. Well then, you should at least have some sort of health insurance, especially in your line of work. That way, your sister will get a lump sum of money. She can use it to pay off whatever you still owe on the car or the apartment. It's the least you can do, so she doesn't get stuck with the bill. Just then it hit me, like a heavyweight's right hook on fight night. Peggy, I'll have to take a rain check on that coffee. I got a stop to make. Hold my calls. As I grab my hat off the hook and head out the front door, I hear Peggy yell out, I'm leaving early today, too, because you ain't got no calls for me to hold. It's 7 o'clock now as I pull onto Howie FELTERSNATCH's street. I notice up ahead George's old beat-up Buick parked curbside in front of his uncle's home. What could he be doing here at this time? I park a few houses down so as not to be seen. Just as I park, I see George walking out of the front door. He locks it, gets in his car, and drives off. Why was he in the house? I decide not to follow him. Instead, I wanted to confirm what I came here to check out. I used the key under the mat on the porch to let myself in. I remember Dixie, the maid, told me that's how she gets in every morning. Dixie. I headed directly into Howie's office. The desk was still a mess, riddled with paperwork. I start checking all the drawers in his desk, but I came up empty-handed, like a stripper working the day shift. Then a large file cabinet across the room caught my eye. I started checking every drawer. Finally, 3 drawers down, bingo, I found the old man's will. I place it on the desk and open it up. But to my surprise, George wasn't in it. Howie's will states that he's leaving all of his possessions and money to charity. Looks like not one single cent is going to George. What a son of a bitch. That's a low blow if you ask me. But I still think George would need a stronger motive to want to kill his uncle. He would have to be gaining something from it, and something big. But what? Then something else caught my eye. Just to the right of the will, on the desk was a smoking pipe. But not just any smoking pipe. It looked exactly like the one George was smoking at his place earlier. Thick, yet elegant. Just then, I hear the front door unlock. I quickly put back the will and hide behind the large, heavy curtains draped against the window. I hear the front door open and shut. Then footsteps. They sound like they're coming towards the office. I put my hand on my revolver, just in case. Someone enters the room. I hear them a few feet away, right next to the desk. I slowly peek out from behind the curtain. To my surprise, it's George. He starts looking around the desk, and then spots his pipe. He must have forgotten it here just a few minutes ago. He picks up the pipe and starts to walk towards the door, then stops, turns back around and over to the desk again. He grabs one specific piece of paper on the desk, as if he knew exactly where it was in that pile of mess. He repositions it on the desk, making it more visible than the rest. He then walks out of the room. I hear the front door shut and lock. I wait a few minutes, and then walk out to the front living room window, and see George drive off again. I head back into the office to check that piece of paper he was so interested in. And there it was, staring me right in the face, was George's motive. If it had been a snake, it would have bit me. And if it was a poisonous one, I would have died. But if just a regular snake, I would have been bruised by the bite marks, and probably have a new phobia of snakes. But I digress. That piece of paper was Howie's life insurance policy, with George being the beneficiary. At the bottom of the paper was both Howie and George's signatures. I carefully pick up the paper with my handkerchief and place it into a large envelope I found on the desk. I headed straight out for the lab. I sure hope Walter's working late. We now join Detective Johnson once again in the police lab with the lab examiner Walter. Walter, I'm glad you're here. You know me, Detective. Burning the midnight oil. Looks as if you're doing the same. Yes, I am. And I think I nearly solved the case. Except for this one last piece of evidence. I was hoping you could check it for fingerprints and make it a priority. Absolutely. I'm in the middle of another high-priority case at the moment. The earliest I could have it for you is the morning. Yes, that'll do. I knew I could count on you, Walter. Anytime, Detective. Well then, I think it's time for me to get a little shut-eye. It's gonna be a big day tomorrow. We'll touch base in the morning. Say hello to the wife and kids for me, Walter. Detective, I'm not married. We now join Detective Johnson at the local police station, where he arranged for a squad car to bring in George for some more questioning. I stood behind the one-way mirror for a while and observed George sitting at the table in the adjacent room. He looked a bit nervous. His right knee was bouncing up and down at a rapid pace. He was biting his fingernails like a fat mouse binging on cheese to deal with its emotions. Finally, the call came in.
Good morning, Detective. It's Walter from the lab.
Good morning, Walter. What have you got for me?
Well, Detective, we found some beautiful textbook kind of prints on that piece of paper evidence you brought in last week. They couldn't be clearer. The prints came back to a male named George FELTERSNATCH.
Did any prints on that paper belong to anyone else?
No, Detective. His prints were the only prints found on that paperwork. And like I said, they were all very clear prints.
Wonderful, Walter. I can always count on you. Thanks again. We'll chat soon. Give the wife and kids my best.
I'm not married, Detective.
I hang up the phone and head into the interrogation room. Good morning, George. Thanks for coming in on such short notice. Well, Detective, all I had to do today was look for a job, but this investigation is definitely more important. Is there a reason you sent the police to come pick me up? Well, I know you're out of a job at the moment, so I figured you could save on the gas. That's very thoughtful of you. Thank you. So, is there some new finding in the investigation? Let me ask you a question, George. You a fan of baseball? Ever been to a game? Yeah, yes, I am actually. I used to go as a kid. My friend's father used to bring us all the time. As I got older, I lost touch with that friend, and as you know, I can't afford much these days, so haven't been since. What about your uncle? Was he a fan? Yeah, he was a big fan. He used to go at least once a month during the season. He always sat behind home plate, too. Well, that must have been exciting for you as a young kid. I wouldn't know. He never brought me with him. I asked a few times, but he would just say that it was for business, not pleasure, and that he couldn't have a kid with him. How did that make you feel? Angry? I used to look up to him. He traveled, had a lot of nice things, and a lot of friends, but he was always hard on me, yet he never took me under his wing. So we haven't gotten along since the early days. So then why continue to help him and take care of his property after all these years of abuse, George? Well, he paid me. It wasn't much, but it was something. You're telling me, George, that you would rather continue to take this abuse from your uncle than to go find another job that would pay an equal amount, if not more, but without the abuse. After all these years, George paused for a minute. I'm not really qualified for much. It's been tough to find a job. Or maybe you were hoping to get something more out of it. Is that it, George? Is this what you brought me here for, detective? To try and pin this on me? Maybe you were trying to get something more out of it. Like your name in his will, for example. I'm not even in his will. How do you know that, George? I mean, what I mean is, he would never, not after the way he's treated me all these years, he would never put me in. Now listen here, George. We can play this cat and mouse game all day, but let's just assume I already know everything. If you come clean now, I'll see to it that you get taken care of. Why are you trying so hard to get me to admit to something I didn't do? George, we found the Louisville Slugger, and it had your fingerprints all over it. The only other prints on there were your uncle's, and we know damn well that he didn't beat himself to death. Now let's not make this harder than it has to be. I don't know what you're talking about, detective. George, I was in your uncle's office last night when you were there. I know everything. So if you just come clean with the whole thing and give us your confession, I can get you out of the death penalty, which is most likely what you're looking at here. But if I just book you on all the facts and evidence we have, well, you'll surely get the death penalty. Now's your chance, George. George froze. He stared off in the distance, wide-eyed, like a deer in headlights. It's a good thing you went back for your pipe, George. You wouldn't want to lose that. Seems like one of a kind. George turned pale once I mentioned I knew he went back for the pipe. So what's it gonna be, George? George turned his head and stared right through me with a daze in his eyes. He tormented me my whole life. Between that and living in such poverty, while watching him have more than he would ever need, he shared none of it. And I couldn't take it anymore. There's only so much a man can take. I had to kill my uncle, so I did. I was at his house earlier in the day, doing yard work as usual. He was yelling at me about not liking the way I had planted some flowers that he wanted in his yard. He never even came out to have a closer look at the work I did. He just sat in the house and yelled across the yard at me through the window. It was embarrassing. All the neighbors could hear him belittling me. He did this often, but that day, it was the last straw. I left and I went right home, but the rage in me, just kept growing. All I could hear was his voice, yelling and yelling, talking down to me. I went to the bar, to have a few drinks to relax, but it just made things worse. I became more enraged. I knew the maid left at 6 p.m. like clockwork, so I waited till 8 and then headed back. The Louisville Slugger was mine. I had gotten it from one of the games my friend's father brought us to when I was younger. I loved that Slugger because it reminded me of how magical the stadiums were. But I also hated it because it reminded me of the pent-up resentment I had for my uncle, never taking me to any of the games with him. When I got to his house, I walked in, and Howie was in the living room. He immediately started yelling at me because he never wanted me inside of his house. He always liked to make sure that I was beneath him. So I started yelling back. I let out all that pent-up anger and resentment, screaming. I was so enraged I don't even remember much of what I said. But I know at one point, as we were yelling back and forth, I was pointing the slugger in his face. He grabbed it a few times, but being a weak old man, he didn't have much of a grip, so I was able to break it free each time. The last thing I remember him saying was that I was fired and that he never wanted to see me again. At that point, I snapped. I wound up and swung the slugger across the right side of his face with all my might. The blow was so hard that it sent him stumbling over a few feet until he fell. On his way down, he nailed his head on the coffee table. The dead silence that immediately followed that moment was a sense of comfort that I haven't felt ever. And how do you explain this, George? I take the life insurance paper out of the folder and slide it across the table. It has Howie's signature delegating you, the beneficiary, and your signature as acknowledgement. However, your fingerprints are the only prints on the paper. How's that, George? That's because Howie never saw that paperwork. I knew I wasn't in his will, so I figured that if I was going to go this far and murder him, I might as well try and get some money out of the deal. So I forged the whole thing. Well, George, I hate to tell you this, but if you had left out the greedy part, you might have gotten away with the whole thing. Honestly, Detective, I didn't even care too much about the consequences. I figured, best case scenario, I get away with this whole thing and use the money to move away and start a new life. And worst case scenario, I'd get caught, locked up, and never have to worry about where my next meal is coming from or have a roof over my head. In some ways, I already felt like I was serving a sentence. Either way, in both those cases, I'd never have to see or hear him talk down to me ever again. So I guess you can say you got what you wanted, George. Well, Detective, I do still feel that sense of comfort that came over me the moment he went silent. So I guess you can say, yeah, I did. I stand up and walk over to the door. Well, George, I feel your pain, but at the same time, I've got a job to do. I knock on the door, and 2 officers walk in and cuff him up. Oh, and George, I'll see to it that they allow you to keep your pipe with you in the slammer. George gave me a little smirk and nodded his head. You're an okay guy in my book, Detective. Although most of the time I'm hard as nails, I do have a sweet side, like cotton candy. But the blue kind, not the pink. All right, boys, book 'em. Another case solved. Now I got a date with Miss Dixie Normus. I still can't get the vision of her bodacious bust out of my mind and the sweet floral whiskey scent out of my nostrils. Dixie. This has been another episode of Quickly Solved Crimes with Detective Harry Johnson, entitled The HOWIE FELTERSNATCH Murder. That's the end of our program. Please join us next time. Have a wonderful night and take it easy.
This is a recording.
Pull it together, will ya?